Hi, everyone. I am Melinda Stoops, host of the Reluctant Free Agent podcast. And today's guest with me is Nathan Henton. And I think, Nathan, correct me if I'm wrong, even though we both worked in the higher education industry, I don't think we crossed paths except until we met on LinkedIn, both as reluctant free agents. Is that right?
Yeah, to my recollection, yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of funny. It's interesting how you can be in the same industry and then you cross paths when you both um, aren't working in that
Well, you're out of it.
industry anymore, and you're like, oh, I'm looking for a job. So, welcome, Nathan. And I'm excited to talk to you today. I every time I think of having someone join me and this, I always think of just different perspectives, and it's amazing how even though in some way we have a similar story, everyone has a unique story. So I'm looking forward to learning more about your story today. So welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm very glad to be here. Your Reluctant Free Agent newsletter and your posts have been. I'll hit that some more in a minute, but they've been really useful to me in this very strange season I find
Mm,
myself in.
I'm glad. And this is a strange season. That's a good way to phrase it. We should come up with good phrases for bad things. So strange season seems to be one of those. So
Uh,
yeah, I will credit you when I say that, the strange season. Job loss. Quote Nathan Henton. Um, I always like to start by just having you tell your story about how you became a reluctant free agent and just give us a little bit of background on that.
sure. Um, yeah, so I'm actually a reluctant free agent now for about the third time in 4 years.
That's
It's a
tough.
little strange. Yeah, it's there are always nuances. The most recent time, I recently posted sort of my take on it on LinkedIn because it was the 1 year anniversary and I needed to do something with that.
Mm,
But basically, I've been working for a nonprofit for about 18 months, doing what I thought was a bang up job. I've been given a two-step promotion on an organizational rank in July of 24. Everyone seemed
mm,
really happy. I had just finished helping pull off. I was sort of assisting in the planning, but then did most of the work toward the execution of this big workshop event. That was the biggest of its type that the organization had ever done.
mm,
Um, and among other, so I was building platforms online. I was doing a lot of coordination with the sort of facilitators for a lot of the sessions. Um, at one point there are actually several of them going on at once, including this big one. And at one point, I was the sole point of contact for about 1,300 people,
oh,
um,
wow.
participants, leaders, whatever. Just directing all the traffic. There were some days I would come in, and the only thing I get done that day was work through my inbox because that was sort of the nature of what I was doing. But anyway, so we pulled the event off. It was a huge success. And in late September, I suddenly one day have this meeting because it was all remote. So I have this meeting added to my calendar with my boss that says updates. Oops, I need to plug my computer in. I forgot that.
Okay. Yeah, we don't want to lose you midstream.
No, you think you take care of everything, and then there's just one thing. Anyhow, but I get this calendar invitation added. It says updates, and I was like, oh, cool, because we need to talk because I had a
Mm,
long list of things that I needed to pass along. So I pull up the call a couple minutes early, of course, because I'm a good employee. And there sits my boss and the director of HR. Right. If you've been on LinkedIn for more than 5 minutes, you know what that means. And they just announced to me that my position was terminated effective immediately. Um, my my email account was disconnected within about 3 minutes of that. Like it was
mm,
crazy fast. Of course, stunned. I don't. The reason they gave was a little fuzzy. It sounded something like needed someone with greater managerial acumen. To which I kind of want to say great, like greater than what I just did. You know,
Yeah.
kind of thought I was crushing it. Um, what, where do you go from here? Um, and I did ask flat out because the explanation just didn't scan. I did have the presence of mind to say, "Oh, okay, what did I do wrong?"
Mhm.
And the response was, "Nothing. That was just it. It was done."
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so that's where I've been for the last year. But again, as I said, that's sort of the third time. The previous time it actually happened about 18 months before that. I was working at a relative's immigration law firm, again, experiencing some pretty great success,
Mhm.
and joined a call with my relative in January. And he said, yeah, we're discontinuing your position, something, 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 maybe there's an economic downturn coming. Also, our retirement plans. I mean, they were only paying me $43,000. I don't really understand how that works with their retirement plans, but there we
Mhm.
are.
Yeah.
So your job for the next 2 months is to find a new job. Like we'll keep, which was something like that was
Yeah.
nice. But yeah, so all of a sudden that's gone. And the first time was back in 2021. That one was semi-voluntary. I worked at an institution of higher education. I chose to leave because there were, like many places in higher ed, uh, especially since the pandemic, there were increasingly tenuous circumstances. It just seemed like it was better to leave than to be dropped abruptly, which is something that had actually happened to several
Yeah.
colleagues the year before. Like there had been
Yeah.
a bunch of people who, in a span of 2 weeks, and of course, academics, you need a good 6 month warning, 6 month or a year warning because of the way the academic employment cycle works. But anyway, so I had made the decision to leave. Um, uh, went on my spouse and I both went on the market because we worked at the same place and with the agreement that we would move wherever the first one got a job. She got a fantastic role. So we made that move. I sent out 150, 175 academic applications for teaching and sort of writing center director positions, and just nothing came of it. So that had already precipitated a pivot back to I did a return to some work in journalism for a few months before I was called into this relatives law firm. So yeah, so it's been sort of an interesting 4 years, an
Mhm.
interesting what did I say a few minutes ago, a strange season of reluctant
Yes.
creatorhood.
Yeah. It is a strange season, and, it's fascinating because even though everyone's story is different, like, as you were talking, I'm like, "Oh," like, interviewed someone, I don't know if it was early this summer maybe, who'd also lost his job 3 times, like, since COVID, so around the same kind of time
Mhm.
span, and, it's just amazing to think of, having just dealt with it once and just the experience and how tough it was in lots of different ways, like, to think of having to do it a couple more times after that just feels really overwhelming. So, as you think about that, like, what's just been helpful for you in coping with it? Because it's just, somehow you get up and move on.
I actually spend a lot of time, um, just in general, because I find it useful, but thinking about that line from the third Matrix movie near the end. Agent Smith and Neo have been fighting, and Agent Smith says, "Why, Mr. Anderson? Why do you persist?"
Mm,
And Neo's reply is, "Because I choose to." So, I think about that sort of similar things that are useful. But I do actually have quite a lot to be grateful for. I don't do the job I would like to do in terms of reflecting on gratitude, but um, our situation is far from great right now.
mm.
But by all rights, it should be so much worse. We're holding things together. So trying to hold on to that gratitude, but not trivially, not flippantly,
Yeah.
not glibly, not just, oh, everything will be all right. The sun will come out tomorrow. Nothing like that. It's just more that Um, Here is another day.
Mhm.
Like Frederick Buechner, a theologian I like to read, he has this great line: "Here is the world, beautiful and terrible things will happen. Don't be afraid."
Mm.
Um, so then, sort of as part of that, the support from my immediate family, my spouse and my kids, has been remarkable. They've just been
Mhm.
very, very calm. Like everybody, we all have bad days, right? But the fact that I have not um, felt this great pressure to resolve this quickly. Not that I'm not trying to resolve it quickly,
Right,
right? But
right.
that it's when you're surrounded by people who understand that you're throwing everything you've got at a process.
Mhm.
That's enormously helpful.
Yeah.
Um, I've got some other good friends who are sort of propping me up, and I'm going to name them because
Oh, good for you.
when
Give a
when
shout
you're
out.
grateful. So my good friend Michael Upton, who is a director of development at Itawamba Community College, is I've known Michael for close on 20 years now, something like that.
Mm.
He texts me something funny almost every day without fail.
Wow.
Um, my good friend Luke Duncan, who I've also known, Luke is one of the most interesting humans I know, and I know a lot of interesting people. I think he's basically a brand manager for a nonprofit in Nashville. He just will text me or call me every few weeks. Um, I have a few members of a Sunday school class, just a couple of them, who every time they spot me will say, "Hey, how's it going? What's new?"
Mm.
Um, our mutual friend Rebecca Kennedy, who was
Mhm.
actually our connection, she turned me on to what you were doing for reasons I cannot fathom. She has decided that I am worth pulling for.
Oh.
Um, so lots of constant encouragement from her, but she's also provided some pretty keen insights and feedback on
Mhm.
some materials I've had at various points. That's been very useful. Um, Ashley Boyle, who started out as just one of the parents on this team of 10, 11-year-old girls I coached in soccer, and has now taken over coaching that team. Really, really gifted educator and coach. She connected me to. We'll get to sort of how I'm managing all this in a minute. But one of the jobs I have is as a contract Spanish interpreter, and the
Mm.
reason I have that job is because Ashley connected. She's like, "Hey, I've got this guy I know. He's got this little company,"
Mhm.
and so that's something. Um, I have some other friends in the school district. One of my other jobs is as a substitute teacher, and so a few of them have been like, "Oh, hey, are you still subbing? Hey, are you available this day or that way? You could come be with my class." So like they've tapped me.
Mm.
Um, kind of along with that, not exactly friends, but as I mentioned, people like yourself with your reluctant free agent, and some of the people that I've read through that, the people commenting on your posts and the things that you've put out there. Um, have been really useful for perspective, for rethinking. I've also been following a lot of Alex P, who I believe you reposted it, president of
Yeah.
Vibe. His take has been really, really refreshing because we're about the same age and we're, I think, confronting many of the same systemic issues. And for him to name those systemic issues,
Mhm.
um, knowing that we're kind of coming from similar places, but then also to do so with humor, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of validating in the sense that okay, I'm not hallucinating this.
Mhm.
These are things that are going on out of the world, and yes, we can laugh at them because why not? Um, there's I guess the other thing is I've told the two stories of these most recent eliminations, and it's maybe we could talk about this in a minute. It's hard not to see both of those as sort of personal. There were small organizations. I was fired in both cases by fired, terminated, position eliminated, whatever you want. I don't have a job anymore. Whatever it is you want
Right,
to
whatever you
call
wanna
that.
label it as.
All right. I had a job, and then someone I trusted told me I didn't have one anymore.
Mhm.
so like there's I don't know a better way to say this except sort of a little bit of sense of revenge. In
Mm,
the sense of um, the reasons you gave were nonsense. We all know it. And so that's kind of motivating to like, well, the next job is going to be even better.
yeah.
And kind of related to that has been the absolute incredulity of everyone I've shared my stories with, and especially with people who knew me in both of those roles, who I had contact with, not necessarily from within the organization, but because we had contractors and we had participants and mentors and whatever people we brought in, and people that I've shared the story with have all reacted with, "Wait, they did what?" There are even a couple of instances where a couple of them actually called me on the phone or texted me
Mm.
because they needed tech support, and I'm like, well, I guess you weren't told. Um, and so like hearing those reactions, like because when this happens to you once, and then when it happens to you
Yeah.
twice, like at a certain point, you kind of start to question everything. Like, well, gosh, did I mess something up? What did I do? What did I do wrong? I must have done something wrong.
Mhm.
And to hear reflected back, well, you're the reason I kept coming back because you made it easy. That's
Yeah.
self-congratulatory. Apologies. I don't mean it that
No,
way.
but
But
no, it just shows that you were someone who was valued for the work you were doing, and you said you'd gotten some promotions, or I don't know if that was the word you used, or something
yeah, yeah.
recognized in your work. So, yeah, and it's so interesting when the feedback you're receiving is good, and then you walk into a meeting not expecting that it's gonna be like, "Well, whatever, your job's been
Yeah.
eliminated," or whatever the phrase is.
And the first layoff was a little bit different because I had sensed something was off. I
Yeah.
had I had sort of known it was coming for 4 or 5 months before. And so I had already started searching. So
Mhm.
um, the betrayal aspect again because of
Yeah.
someone I trusted who had actually come to me and said, "Hey, come work for me."
Yeah.
That was tough, but at least there wasn't the element of surprise.
Yeah.
But with this most recent one, yeah, that was an ambush. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, well, I can relate to that. You mentioned getting in the meeting and seeing the HR person there and being like, "Oh, if they're there, you know." Well, I walked into my meeting and the vice president of HR was there, and I still, even with him sitting there, didn't even think this was about me. I thought
Wow.
maybe there's an issue with someone on my team. Like, that didn't even cross my mind. I was just so like, "Oh, hey," and I made a joke about him being there. And then I was like, "Oh, the joke's on me."
You
I
made
got
it. You
to
made a joke. The HR VP laughs nervously.
Yeah, it was one of those awkward moments. I'm like, "Oh." So, yeah, it's just like, I don't know, it's just it's hard, and, I guess regardless of whether you're expecting it or not, it still, like, it is awful, and it doesn't feel good, and then we're left, picking up the pieces, and, one thing you said that is, I guess, one of my pet peeves, is how, with the most recent position, like everything was shut down that day, and I feel like I just posted about this on LinkedIn, sort of some
Hmm.
tips for people who are laying people off. I'm like, if they trusted you to be working there and you're working remotely, so independently, you had access to all the stuff. If they trusted you up to that point, like, to give you the grace to give you a little notice and trust you enough to not say, "Oh, we're gonna shut you off today." It just feels like one of those things that is just an added hit at a time when you're already getting this blow. And I think of it, you were remote, but I think of people who I know who then had to pack up their office that day and walk out with that stuff. And I just feel like that's just I just can't imagine having to do that. And I was blessed that I didn't have to do that, even though it was still hard. So I think there are ways that as people think about letting people go for whatever reason, that you can do it in a way that is honorable, I guess, and show some
Yeah,
grace in the process.
respectful
Yeah.
of this person you've had working for you. I had added to my notes just this morning because I had seen your post, because one of the things that I've of course reflected on a lot over the last year especially, but really some time before that, um, is, I mean, my PhD is in writing, rhetoric, and technical communication, and I've worked as a journalist. I've been involved with planning some charity events, so I understand a thing or five about basically story management.
Mhm.
And so thinking about everything that's in your list, right? There's a respect in which everything an organization does is a form of brand management,
Mhm.
because whether it's your advertisement or your people, your story is getting out there. What do you
Yeah.
want that to be? So thinking about, um, in both my instances, right? And this is not unique to me. Like, I recognize there are loads of people this happens to. When a company decides to end someone's position abruptly and do it the opposite of what you describe, and then does things like, as happened in both of my cases, gives what's clearly a nonsense reason,
Mm.
right? That what's said
Mhm.
doesn't match anything else that's known.
Mhm.
Right. So a couple of PR rule 101 is tell your story before someone else does. You be the first to tell your story. Um, and 1B is tell the truth. Because here's what happens when you don't tell the truth, and when you don't supply sufficient detail. In the absence of a clear story,
Mhm.
people will make up a story to suit the facts they do have.
Yeah.
So, like, even if, as I did, you sign a non-disparagement clause, which I've not done. None of these. I've never mentioned any of these people or any of these organizations
Mhm.
by name. I still have a right to tell my story.
Mhm.
And the most damaging thing I can say, in many ways, is the truth.
Yeah.
So, so tell me about what happened at your last job. I don't know.
Yeah.
Saying I don't know is enormous brand damage, because the the prospective employee who's trying to account for what happened at the last place is giving an honest answer. That person is not the one who looks bad. The
Mhm.
organization who did it, who chose not to tell their own story, who chose
Yeah.
not to manage their own narrative by not managing their own people well.
Mhm.
That's enormous brand damage. And the dismissed employee now looking for a new job damages that brand without naming a single name.
Yeah.
Um, it's sort of strange how that works and how many organizations fail to consider that.
Yeah, and I think about it particularly now with just in higher ed. So many schools are
Mm,
in big trouble financially, and I
yep.
understand intellectually that when they're laying people off, that I understand they're doing it to try and keep the institution afloat, and I get that, but I also
Yep.
think, as we've been talking about, there are ways to do that in a way that's kind and that recognizes the work that people have put in it to that point, and I think some institutions have done, as good a job maybe as you can in that situation. Then there are other stories you
Yep.
hear that you're like, "Why did you do that? That's just, it's unnecessary, it's not helpful," and so I think that's just one important message that, like, I think that layoff should be, the last ditch effort. But if it has to happen to stay in business and support, all the students who have committed to it, to support other
Mhm.
staff, then and again, intellectually, I understand, even though it's painful. But you do have choices in how you do that. And I keep thinking back to, I always say, we can't control everything that happens to us, but we can control how we respond. And so,
Yes.
you might not be able to control that. Um,
Change
Fewer
in
international
input.
students, and you're not getting the grant money, and you're
Yeah.
and this and this and this, but you can control sort of how you're choosing to respond. And that's even beyond like, oh, we have to make these cuts. It's like, how do you navigate that? So, yeah. So, I
Mhm.
guess I'm just making a pitch for like being kind to others, it's just, it goes a long way. And as you're talking, it circles back to like how you just listed by name all these people who have been so supportive of you and just, I don't want to say gone out of the way because that makes it sounds like it's something like that they're doing that's above and beyond. But like that guy who like texts you almost like every day, I'm like, he's just like, what a wonderful person to just be reaching out and thinking of you and saying, "Hey, you're my friend, and I'm going to support you at this time." And other people just keeping you on the radar. I think I guess that's what I'm talking about. That we can all choose to be like that.
Here, we talk about good encapsulations. Here's another one. Kindness is the best brand management.
Yeah, yeah,
When you treat people kindly, your brand looks good.
yeah. That's
When
true.
you don't, people talk.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I guess you can tell a lot about an organization by how people talk about it afterwards. And you hope that it's good. And of course, there's always going to be people who don't like it and people who love it. But in between, places get reputations, and so you want to.
Hmm.
I mean, even putting aside the brand, I just think it's about just you know
Yeah,
being just the process of someone you've gotten to know and hopefully you care about them at some level and you want to take care of them even if you have to let them go. So just that piece about the relationships, I think that's relational as well because you have a relationship with the people
mhm,
who are
yeah,
letting you
absolutely.
go, and that's really important as well. So going back to the relationships, you have some good relationships to be thankful for, and the gratitude piece I think is really, really helpful. And what about just as you're looking for a job, how's that been in terms of what's been helpful for you? Because more and more you hear stories of people applying for like hundreds of jobs and getting like one interview and then getting ghosted, and it just right now it feels like hiring. Actually, I was listening to an NPR broadcast a couple weeks ago where hiring is slower, and
Hmm.
so it just takes so much longer, and it's easy to feel frustrated because you're putting in a lot of work and not seeing the results. So what's been helpful for you in terms of that piece of keeping going and getting those applications out, even though you're like, oh, I already sent out 100, what's this one going to do? Sorry, I
Yeah.
don't want to discourage you. You'll be like, oh, it's feeling good till Melinda told me what's the point.
No, 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 no. So I mean, the it, I'll maybe flip that a little bit. Sort of anticipating your next question. Sort of what are the challenges
Yeah.
that I've faced. Um, and the first line I wrote for myself is it too obvious to start with the current job market as a trash fire?
Yeah.
Because it is like there are so many, I think, um, systemic issues again that I think Alex P is doing a good job of naming, and also I think some issues at the moment um, that are really causing difficulty. And I guess maybe what's helped, if you can call it that, for maintaining perspective,
Hmm.
um, is understanding that it's not just me. That um, from what I can see, in exchanges on LinkedIn, what I will pick up in various news stories. And I don't know about for every single profession or every single discipline necessarily, but for um, I guess for many of us who were in and maybe this is the broadest. I guess for those of us who were in more white collar professions or who are former academics, that so many of us are facing exactly the same issues.
Mm.
Again, what happens when you've been at this for so long is it's hard not to question yourself. Like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe it is just me. Do I smell
Mhm.
bad? What is it here? So being able to hold on to the perspective that no, it, it's not good that so many other people are facing this, but it helps to see that it's not me, that there are forces at work beyond anyone's control. After that, I guess the thing that has helped is sort of weirdly not focusing too much on any one sector. Um,
Mhm.
I do think one of the challenges that I have just in general is I have 3 degrees in the humanities,
Mm,
um, which and I think this is the challenge for lots of people in the humanities, right? That you've got what you are really is a collection of really valuable skills and uh, incredibly useful knowledge.
mhm,
But what you don't have is a you for many of us, or at least for me, I can't say that I am a or an anything. You
mhm,
you are a psychologist. So while I don't think that you're limited to applying to just psychologist jobs. I don't mean that, right? But
mhm,
when people come to you, when employers come to you, or to an engineer, or to a speech pathologist, what
mhm,
are you? I am a psychologist, an engineer,
mhm,
I'm a mechanical engineer. I am a speech pathologist. Um, I don't have that to fall back on. So I think one of the
mhm.
one of the challenges is um, I don't fit neatly into one of
Mhm.
those boxes, which may be more a problem for the screening bots, the
Yeah.
screening systems before. Like
Mhm,
they spit you out not because there's anything wrong with your materials, but because you don't get to be classified neatly.
mhm. Yeah.
That's the challenge.
Mhm,
Um, but the what's to answer your question, the what's helped me is saying, okay, well, if I'm not an X in this box or that box, then maybe the better way to go is to just I can't go into Indeed and say engineering jobs, tap a couple of filters, hit go, and start working off that list. That is
mhm.
harder.
Yeah.
But what I can do is say, all right, I know the skills I have. Um, oh, that random job posting looks interesting. Can I do that? Yeah, I think I
Mhm,
could do that. Okay, I'll apply for that one. And then something over here in a completely different sector that also kind of well, I could jump on that. It makes the process slower,
mhm.
less convenient in many ways. But I also do recognize, again, trying to hold on to the gratitude. Um, I recognize that in although I am restricted in ways that many of my fellow job seekers are not, I do also have flexibility that many of them lack.
Mm.
For no other reason than I'm not a prisoner of well prisoners wrong choice of words. I
You're
because
not
I don't
locked into. Well, that's
right.
a
I'm
prison
not
kind of thing too. You're not
right.
constrained by a specific title.
Yes, yeah, that's a good way of putting
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So that um, I guess those have been the two biggest things that have helped, and they're maybe
Yeah.
they're sort of vague and intangible, but again, it's a strange season.
Mhm.
You hold on to whatever you can.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. So, I know right now, my understanding is you're location bound, but also could work remotely, but you're not
Mhm.
relocating. And so, as you look at all those jobs out there, whether it's in the higher ed industry or some other industries, like what's your ideal job? Like if you said, "Oh, this is like the perfect type of job for me at this moment in my life," would it be going back into like higher ed and doing teaching, or would it be in a totally different industry?
Yeah, I've given a lot of thought to that. Uh, I don't. I still believe in the value of education generally and of higher ed in particular, right? Like we know sociologically, economically, that education is the magic bullet.
Yeah.
That is the great equalizer. Um, and if you've ever worked at all with first generation college students, right? man, it's what a privileged seat to be able to see the
Yeah.
change occur because, like what's the line? It takes 3 generations to change
Mm,
a family's socioeconomic status. Well, these students who are arriving as first generation college students, they're maybe the generation that's going to be able to make the jump,
mhm.
right? Their
Yeah.
kids are going to they're going to have opportunities that their grandparents couldn't dream of.
Yeah.
But having said that, I'm not. I, I don't think. I don't think the classroom is for me anymore. Especially, I'm enormously grateful for the time I had in it, for the connections I made, for the difference I know I was able to make. Um, and I'm definitely open to the possibility should something come along. But I think because of the way the world has changed, because of the ways that I have changed, um, the kind of things I'm looking for, I think at this point, um, I I do need a I do need a good paycheck.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, well, that's important. That gets into the
right.
practical
I
part of the job,
mean,
like paycheck, benefits.
idealism is great and all that, but
Yeah.
you need to get paid.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I am driven by a desire to do good in the world,
Mm.
to use as many of my talents as possible,
Mhm.
um, and and to honor all those who've invested in me. I think, especially getting my PhD, which is going to be my family, my former professors. I do feel a certain, not exactly obligation, but because there's no pressure there, but I have this impulse to want to honor their investment.
Yeah.
So thinking about all that and looking at the skill set, what do I have? What I find myself applying to more and more are things like um, project management or executive, sort of vice
Mhm.
president or program director, program coordinator type roles across industries. I do find myself looking at a lot of nonprofits, but that's not necessarily like the thing. I do think there's a sort of a more natural progression from higher ed to nonprofit, maybe especially for those of us in the humanities than there is for higher ed to
Yeah.
banking. I
Mhm.
don't know.
Yeah.
I know that pathway exists, right? But what do I know about banking? Nothing beyond as a consumer. Bad example, but
But
so
I get it.
so
It's the same it's the same type of agency, even though the discipline is different. But when you think of a nonprofit and ways in which it operates and the values and all of that, it makes sense.
well, right, and a lot of times those organizations do demand a fair bit of agility, which is
Mhm.
what my skill set brings. It's
Yeah.
broad, it's fairly deep, and I'm really really good at switching among things. So that's the sort of thing I'm looking about. The particular areas. I grew up as an expat, so I remain pretty passionate about immigrant refugee
Mhm.
issues. I grew up as an expat in South America, pre-Montreal Treaty, which is when we banned CFCs that were knocking a hole in the ozone layer. So I got a lot of really bad sunburns when I was a kid. So I'm really passionate about environmental causes, environmental protection. So if I could, I have been trying to maybe with a little more energy try to break into those two sectors, but again, not
Mm,
not
nice.
tied to it.
Yeah.
And if any of these roles has kind of an international dimension, again, because I have this experience as an expat and
Yeah.
as a global citizen from my travels, I mean that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Um, because it would bring me into contact with the people I maybe with the people I know on several continents,
Mhm.
and I just metaphorically, not so much literally flying is kind of a chore anymore, but metaphorically anyway, I think I operate best at 30 to 40,000 feet. I really do see big
Mm,
picture issues and
mhm.
even global connections. It's just sort of
Yeah.
the way I work. A very
Well,
nebulous answer to a very specific question, but that's where I am.
no, but you know what? As you were talking about that, especially towards the end, with the expat background and just the environmental work, like I could see a level of energy there. And I think, it's interesting that even though losing your job is awful, like it opens the door to possibilities that maybe wouldn't exist without. losing your job. Do you know what I mean? Like what I'm doing now, I would never have done if I was still working at my old job. Like I'd just be plugging away and thinking, okay, I'm going to stay in higher ed for the rest of my career. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think thinking of, oh, do I want to start my own business? I would never have done that if I hadn't lost my job, because I would play it safe and say, I'm not going to venture out and do something different. And I think that gets into changing industries, that a lot of people play it safe because it's a big leap and the leap into the unknown. And so I think losing your job frees you up from that, because you're like, what do I have to lose to try and look at this job or apply
Mhm.
to this? You've got nothing to lose and everything to gain.
The reevaluation it forces. I mean, you consider things, you reconsider yourself as a professional, as a human,
Hmm.
in ways that staying in the same, being able to stay in the same career with all the benefits of its stability
Yeah.
would never, or likely never allow, never force,
Yeah.
I guess. And maybe that reevaluation is something that needs to happen. Maybe use you as an example. It's possible that in some great cosmic level, you had done all the good that you were going to do in higher education. Not that you couldn't have done more, but like
Mhm.
your big thing was done.
Yeah.
And now you're getting to do this other big thing. And you would never have moved into this new big thing and all its possibilities, all the good you have done already for people like me, had you not been forced out. I'm hoping I get to some wonderful resolution like that soon.
Yeah, I hope so too, Nathan. I mean, I think, I'd love to see like a positive outcome for everyone,
Yeah.
and it's funny because you and I got to know each other, and there are other people who I don't know personally, but I follow them on LinkedIn. I'm reading their stories and they don't know it, but I'm cheering for them. I'm like, oh, they're waiting to hear back from an interview. I hope they got the job. And then when they didn't, I was just like, you can comment on it, but it's just like, you know, yeah, I hope that, and for you, I hope that in the near future, an opportunity comes up that maybe never would have been there if it weren't for this. But I don't know. I'm a firm believer, and this is where I guess we get into what we believe or don't believe, because there's no data to support this. But I'm a firm
Sure.
believer that things work out and that sometimes we just can't see how that's going to work out. And I've always felt like over the past, when I've dealt with life situations, in the end, I've come out better because of it. And so, I'm optimistic in that way. And so I look forward to hearing where this journey leads you, because I believe it's going to be something really cool. I just don't know what it is yet. And you don't know what it is, but I better be one of the first people you tell when you find
Oh,
out.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Thank
with
you for
that
that.
said,
Very kind.
is there anything we haven't talked about that you want to cover? I know we've covered a whole hodgepodge of stuff. But
Yeah. No, I think I, I think I guess the only thing that's maybe worth throwing in, and this maybe a little bit of a downer note, but like it's well, but it's something I've been thinking about.
Mhm.
That maybe I don't know, maybe it's validating for the people that are in a similar position,
Yeah.
um, and maybe even for people who are sort of trying to support them and not realizing what they're looking at. Um, so I'm working three jobs now. At one point, I was working four. I
Mm.
finally had to let the Uber driving go. But so I work in retail, and in fact, I'm going to go do that here in a bit. I'm a substitute teacher, and I'm a Spanish interpreter by contract. The thing that's hit me lately is what I call the speed of underemployment.
Mm.
When we have a stable job, right, life can still be pretty hectic. But when you're seeking, or when you're underemployed, life moves even faster. I'm
Mm.
working 50 to 60 hours a week for half of what I was making before.
Yeah.
It, now, it's a reality. Not it's a
Yeah,
reality,
it
right?
is. Yeah.
Um, and so what happens there is a couple of things. Um, One of them is that I am constantly in the position of having to react or respond to whatever anybody throws out there. Oh,
Mm,
I've got a day, like they've given me a day off from retail. Oh, here's a subbing appointment. Here's a substitute teaching thing. Yeah, I'll go do that. Um, and then okay, well, let's see. Tomorrow I get off at 3, but they need me to go do an interpreting thing at 3:15. Yeah, that's just 10 minutes away. I can make that. So you end up packing your days full. I've managed a couple of days where I did 3 of the 4 jobs at once. Um, and so you're having to react very, very quickly,
mhm.
constantly. And then the other thing that happens is searching for a job should be your full-time job, and can
Yeah,
be. But when you're having to hustle that hard, you don't have a lot of time left for it. You don't have a lot of time or energy left because you also don't have a lot of time to do the
yeah,
necessary recovery and rest to do anything well. And so that's been sort of an interesting um, kind of discovery to think about the amount of hustle that's required
yeah.
to be underemployed. And I went,
Yeah, no, it sounds exhausting, and I think about, like, even when you think about just self-care stuff, like whether it's exercising or spending time with family or friends, it
mhm,
helps so much to have, some sort of regular routine or structure that you can build that around, that you're like, "Oh, yeah,
yeah,
let's get together. Okay, well, I'm usually home from work by 6:30, so let's do this." But, like, when you're juggling 3 jobs, I don't know how you can say that from one week to the next. So I could see that there's also energy just into trying to live your life and spend time with family and friends, and, if you wanna work out or have a hobby or anything. So I can see that it's exhausting, and all the stuff that sort of rejuvenates us is hard, I assume, to figure out how to manage all that.
there's a lot
So
that gets
yeah,
cut out.
yeah, it is. It is.
Or that gets crammed in at odd angles. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like trying to overpack a suitcase.
Mm, that's a good metaphor. You need those bungee cords to put on the outside to keep it from
Yeah,
exploding. Yeah, yeah. Well, your suitcase is full, and hopefully you will be moving towards I don't know what it would be, a smaller suitcase, that bigger suitcase, but a different suitcase where you have space for other
a
stuff.
neater packing job. I'll take that.
There you go. There you go. I'm not good with these metaphors today, but nonetheless, um, yeah. So if people were watching this and wanted to connect with you, Nathan, what's the best way to reach you? Reach you? Would it be on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is great, but I mean, I'm also open to emails. My email is nathan.henton@icloud.com. At least that's the one I'm using for all my professional connections. So, yeah, either means is fantastic. Happy to be of help to anybody that I can, because that's the other thing you do, right? When other people are drowning too, like, well, let's hang on to each other. Maybe we'll float a little better.
Yeah.
But
No.
yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. And I'll make a note when I send this out. I'll type up your email so people can have that and
That'd be
not
great.
just be like having to pause. So yeah, not that it's a difficult email address, but it's good to have it right down. So Nathan, I'm thankful that we've had time to actually spend together off of LinkedIn and get to know each other a little bit more. Um, and as I said, I think that this is an opportunity for something positive to come your way. And I can't wait to hear what it is. And I know I'm being very egocentric here, but I know I'll be one of the first people you tell. No
Yes, yes,
pressure,
you
but I
will.
expect to be one of the first people you
You
tell.
absolutely will. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for having me on, Melinda, and for this podcast and for everything else you're doing to support all of us reluctant free agents. Truly appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm happy to help as I can because I'm one of the group as well. So, yeah. So, okay. Well, thank you all for watching this and have a great day. Bye.